Om Shri Sai Ram. My humble and loving pranams in the divine lotus feet of our dear Swami, respected elders. I see a number of young children, brothers and sisters of the Sai family. Coming to a congregation of Sai devotees always fills up one's heart with joy. I've always found that one could go to different places and experience different feelings. But when you go to a Sai satsang or a place where Baba's bhajans are sung, and the atmosphere is full of divinity, inspired by Baba, one gets only one feeling. That's a feeling of joy, a feeling of elation, a feeling of great peace. We leave all the worldly affairs out of our minds. And the 1 hour or so that we spend here is something which you cannot describe, but can only experience. So I thank Swami for giving me this opportunity to come on this lovely Sunday morning to your meeting today, hearing your melodious bhajans. I must compliment the bhajan singers. They were excellent. I'm sure all of you feel that the singing here is on par with what we hear in Prashanti Nilayam. So it really elevates our soul. I'm here on a short holiday with my family, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, all of them are here. So I thought I will spend a Sunday morning with some Sai devotees. That's the reason why I called Brother Narendra Reddy, and also he was kind enough to talk to Brother Kiran, and they spent yesterday with me and took me from centers, and today I'm here with you. I'm here to talk to you about the days after the Mahasamadhi and the days before the Mahasamadhi. I want to convey two pieces of information to you, and that is from my own experience. The Swami believed in talking directly, and Swami also believed in talking and conveying things without saying anything. It sounds axiomatic or more oxymoron. How can somebody talk without speaking? But that's really what happens in Swami's school. I'll give you two incidents, and then you'll probably get a feeling of what I am trying to say. The first incident happened on the 52nd birthday of Bhagwan, on the 23rd of November 1978. I had finished college, had started my education in post-graduation in law, and also I was doing chartered accountancy. I took the first chartered accountancy exam that November. We finished exams around the 15th of November. And promptly after that, a whole big family, my father, my uncle, my aunts, my brother, I think there were about 15 of us in that group. All of us went to Prashanti Nilayam. Those days, of course, the Sai Kulwant Hall was not there. It was only the Purnachandra Hall where Swami used to reside and give darshan. And so Swami saw us, and he spotted the family all there. Immediately he, after the morning darshan, he sent word to say that we should all go to his house inside, just behind the stage of Prashanti Nilayam and of Purnachandra Hall. If you all remember, just behind the stage, there was a small ante-room, and at one level was Swami's dining room, sitting room, everything. I think it was probably the size of this altar, maybe nothing more than that. That's all the size. The dining room was maybe where the speakers are kept. That's all the dining room was. That was Swami's living space. And in the first floor he had his place to rest and his bedroom. So he called us into this place, and we were all, Swami blessed us, and he was very happy that the whole family was there. He gave saris to everybody. He looked at me and he said, "What are you doing?" I told him, "Swami, I finished college. I'm now doing chartered accountancy, and I'm also studying my law." So he said, "You are a student. You must be a vidyarthi. Don't become a vishyarthi." This was the message directly conveyed to me. I don't know why he said it and what he meant by it. But anyway, it was a message which went straight to my heart. And these words were reverberating in my mind. So why did Swami say this? Maybe he was trying to tell me that my vision is going away from my education and that I should bring it back and concentrate on that education. And that's exactly what I did. I took the cue from Bhagwan's guidance. I went through the exams, and in my whole batch of students who joined with me, I was the only guy who cleared both the intermediate and final CAs in one shot. I got a rank in both the exams. I took my law exams the following year. I came out in flying colors. I got a first rank with 3 degrees, 3 gold medals. And before I was 23, I had finished 3 professional degrees. I also did my company secretaryship. So what I'm trying to say is, this was not possible but for Bhagwan's guidance and his unseen hand that was there blessing us. So this is a form of direct communication. Swami always communicated. If he had to tell somebody something, he directly communicated to you. Swami also communicated things indirectly, and I'll come to the second episode now. Years later, of course, Swami blessed us at our wedding, and more than any parent could do, he did for me. After the wedding, we used to go to Swami quite often. He saw my wife had a complication. My first daughter was born, and she had to be on a catheter all the time for nearly 3 or 4 weeks. But she was very keen to see Bhagwan, and she was insistent that she would come. So my dad said, "Okay, we'll make an effort, but how are you going to manage?" She had to carry a bag and all sorts of problems, and the baby was very young. And she insisted that she would like to see Swami and take his blessing with the child. The child was only 7 or 8 days old. We took her and went to Whitefield. The minute Swami saw, my wife went to touch his feet. No, don't do that. You should not do that now. He made her sit on a chair, and then he took the baby in his arms. He blessed the baby, gave something to the baby, gave something to the mother. And my wife started weeping. She said, "Swami, you have to take care of this girl because I don't know how long I live." Because she was very worried about the condition in which she was. Swami said, "Don't worry, you will live long time, and I will also take care of the baby." Now, this was when the first daughter was born. That first daughter grew up, she studied law, she went to America, did a post-graduation in law in Washington, D.C., came back to India, joined my profession. Shortly after that, just before she came back, every time I went to Puttaparthi, Swami would see me and say, "What have you done?" Meaning that I must now start looking for an alliance for her, that I can't wait for anything. So then I took his guidance. I said, "Swami, I have located this boy." I went and saw him, and then didn't go through. And it went on like this. Finally, I told him, "Swami, I have located a boy who is from a lawyer family. He's also a lawyer. He studied in England. He went to Warwick. And I'm thinking of pursuing him." The minute I said that, he said, "Yes, go to him. Because this boy, I know his father, I know his grandfather. They're both lawyers, just like me, 3rd generation lawyer." And I'd seen the boy, he was practicing in our court. So the minute I said it, he said, "Yes, go ahead." So the marriage took place. Swami blessed us all and gave us too much of love. After that, 6 or 8 months down the line, we all went again for darshan. Swami looked at her and said, "Yen samachara." For those who understand Kannada, whenever you ask "Yen samachara" to a newly married girl, it's a question as to whether are you in the family way. So that's how an elder usually asks a young newly married girl. Oh, my daughter said, "No, Swami, no, Swami, no, Swami." And we went away. A week later, she went and got a pregnancy test done, and it was proved that she was carrying a child. So that means, even before the mother actually was exactly sure of it, Swami had scent of it. And then the child came, and once the child was born, Swami practically made her his child. Because every time we took her to Puttaparthi, even as she was 6 to 8 months old, she would come with us. And even if her mother was not there, she would come with us. And every time she came, Swami made it a point to talk to her, to speak to her, give her vibhuti. And when she grew up a little bit, he used to come and stop his chair there and call her, and he would hold a packet of vibhuti. If my wife went to receive it, he would take his hand back. Only when the child put his hand out, he used to give it. He used to ask her to come and touch his feet and do Pad Namaskar. Now why I am saying this is, these are direct interactions of Swami with different persons in the world. There is some reason for it. You know, the other two grandchildren, he didn't spend time like that. But this girl, he did. This is something which is of significance to note here. Because why are we all here? We are all here because Swami wanted us to be here. We are all here because Swami thinks that we deserve his blessing. Swami is of the view that we must all feel happy, we must all go in the right track. That's the reason why he made it possible for us to be here. That's the reason why he thought I should come here. But for that, this would never have happened. Now, life went on like this, and years later, I told Swami that, Swami, we want to go to Russia. And he said, Russia? Oh, a lot of my devotees are there, go and visit them, they're all very poor people. I said, yes Swami, I've heard a lot, I've met a few of them here in Prashant Nilayam, but I am just going to go for a short visit. Ah, yes, you go and see my center there. I said, okay, if you so will, I will go. But language is a problem. And I got one telephone number of one lady who happened to be coming to Prashant Nilayam quite often. There were two sisters, one of them is whom we knew. And I took that phone number and we went. The day we were leaving, I took Swami's leave in the morning because Swami was then in Whitefield. And I said, Swami, I'm going to now go to the airport. He said, yes. I got into the car, my car was just driving out the ashram. The Sevadal stopped me and said, sir, there is something I have to place in your car. So I said, I think you're making a mistake really, because I don't expect anything I'm not expecting anybody to give me anything. No sir, this is definitely for you. Are you sure? Yes. Swami has sent instructions, it is coming from Kari Vrindavan. I was a little surprised, because half an hour earlier we were all with Bhagwan. He gave, everybody different gifts. He materialized 3 chains for 3 of my daughters, and each one of a different size. And they all, Swami made, my wife put it on them in his presence. And he bade us goodbye, and I was really not expecting anything. But anyway, the Sevadal insisted. And I said, okay, you can keep it. He brought a big box, about the size of that box there, and placed it on in the car. So I said, what is there in it? He said, sir, I don't know. I was just asked to keep this. So anyway, we put that. I left the ashram, crossed the railway crossing, and I was so curious, I could not wait till I was driving home, and from there to airport, I said, I must see what is in it. So I opened it, and I found a box full of prasadam sweets. I was very intrigued. I said, Swami knows that we are not here for a month, and there's no one at home, all of us are going. And what am I going to do with this box of sweets? Anyway, I left it on the car, and while driving, I thought to myself, maybe I need to take this to Russia. So I told my wife, I think, we need to go back and pull out one more suitcase and put all these sweets in it. And we'll take it, let's see what happens. So we took another suitcase out, packed all the sweets in the suitcase, checked the suitcase in, and we went to Moscow for a stop. And we checked into the hotel. And the language is a big problem. I didn't realize it so much. Though I had a language book, but I just could not manage. So I telephoned that number. Every time I called, somebody in Russian would speak. And there was no way that I could communicate and she could communicate with me. I kept on trying, but every time I thought, at least somebody with English knowledge will pick up the phone. It never happened. It went on like this. Then finally, we were on a river cruise from Moscow to St. Petersburg. So on that 6-day cruise, there was an interpreter, a lady who was a guide and interpreter. So suddenly it occurred to me that I should speak through her. So at the fag end of our journey in St. Petersburg, when we stopped, I asked her, I said, actually first I got off from the ship, and it was not a very big ship, so I don't think it had a Wi-Fi and things like that in those days. Anyway, I got out and I went and searched for a telephone booth. I found a phone booth. I called the number again. Same thing happened. Somebody in Russian couldn't say anything. So I came back very dejected and I said, I really need to speak to somebody. Can you help me? He said, yes, certainly I can. I'll come with you. So she came with me out to the ship. We went to that place and made a telephone call from there. She spoke to that lady, and then someone speaking English came on the phone. Then I had a chat. Then I said, you know, we are going to be here for a few days. So, is there somewhere I can visit? And then she said, oh yes, most certainly, you know, where are you staying? We are going to come and take you to our center. But she said, no, our center we meet only on Sundays, but you're not here till Sunday. So what I suggest you do is we'll take you to a house. We have a small altar for Swami. We'll sing some bhajans. And please come to our house. And I will send somebody to take you. She took some details. And then it occurred to me that, well, I'm going to a center. So what am I going to do with those sweets? I'm going to take those sweets to the center. So all those sweets I packed up, and half of them I picked up and put it in a bag. And we went to the house. As we entered the house, you know, there's a beautiful altar right in front. I entered, and I said, you know, I brought some prasadam from Prashanti Nilayam. And 3-4 of them there, they all started looking at each other's face and had a nice broad smile. I said, why, what happened? He said, no, we knew that you're going to come with prasadam. I said, how did you know that I'm going to come with prasadam? Even 24 hours ago, I didn't know who you were, and I had no means of contacting you. She said, no, we are pretty sure, because the group there had decided to go to an orphanage. And on that very day, that Thursday, they had decided to start collecting donations from people of various things like clothes and things like that, food, collect everything and go the following Sunday to that orphanage. So when I told them that this is the thing, I told her also that, you know, Swami never told me that these sweets have to be brought here and given to you. But somehow that is what I did. And therefore I am here. They said, no, we were sure, because when we started our Sankalpa, we prayed to Bhagavan that Swami must send prasadam. And he has sent the prasadam. Now you see, this is another form of communication. Now, Swami communicated something without telling me anything. Nobody told me. It was easiest for Swami to have told me when he blessed us and gave us all this prasadam, to say, you know, you're going to Russia, I'm going to send you something, you go and take it and give it to such and such a person. I'm going to send a message to that person. Or he could have asked somebody to give me someone's contact to go and meet them. Nothing was told to me. Everything was perceived in my mind. Obviously, dhiyo yonaha prachodayat. Without his prachodana, nothing can come into our head. This is the prachodana which Swami does. So what I am trying to say is Swami's mode of communication is direct and always very clear and precise. Now this is not only my experience. I am sure you would have heard about these experiences of millions of people all over the world. It's not one or two. I've been to most parts of the world, and everywhere I've gone, I've heard people say, this is what happened, this is how Swami sent his blessing, this is how Swami sent a message for us, and this is how we all experienced divinity. And the most mundane things is something which Swami helps you out with. While driving in the car, brothers talking to me about how Swami touches everybody. Now he touched him as a young boy. He was in school, his schoolmaster gave him a set of keys, his car keys, to keep them. And then he was holding on to the key, and during the football match the ball went into a bush, so he went to search for it, and then he found that he didn't have the key. So he was terrified to say, my teacher's key, I've lost, what am I going to do? And then he quietly in his young child's mind said, God, Swami, you must save me. You must find that key bunch for me. And in a few minutes, lo and behold, when he went to the bush and came out again, the key bunch was right in front of him, and he found it and took it. Now, these are things which Swami does directly. So what I'm trying to say is, this is important for us to know that our connection with Bhagavan is a direct connection. All of us feel it. You know, whenever I have any problem, Swami was there physically. I had the great good fortune of being able to go to Bhagavan, sit with him, raise issues. Sometimes you might have to wait, but most of the time he never made us wait. He came out, discussed things, and people thought it was all doing the Swami's trust business, but most of the time Swami's trust business was 2 minutes, family business was for 58 minutes in a 60-minute interview. He would not even allow us to raise those issues, because whenever this family was there, he would just talk about everything, inquire about everyone, and look after everybody's welfare. And he would talk about people all over the world in the same manner. You see, everybody felt one-to-one connection with Bhagavan. So why should we not continue that one-to-one relationship? It's a question which we should now think of. Because the Mahasamadhi has brought about a great deal of turmoil in our minds. You know, our minds have limited capacity. We don't understand. We cannot understand Swami as a phenomenon. We cannot believe. Even now, you know, every time I go and sit in Prashant Nilayam, in fact, you know, the place where I sit, when I look towards Swami's house, there's a gate where Swami used to walk in. And just above that, some of you have noticed, there's now a big picture of Swami. You know, I asked them to put that picture there. Because for me, you know, every time I sat there, my eyes would go there, and it was empty, in the sense that, you know, oh God, I'm not going to see you walking down. I couldn't stand it. So then I talked to our other trustees and I said, you know, is it okay if we put up Swami's picture just above that gate? So when our eyes go there, we can see the beautiful form of Swami there. And everybody said, oh, that's a lovely idea, and they put up that picture just above the gate, if you've noticed it. So what I'm saying is, our minds of limited capacity are concentrating on a physical form. But Swami has said in his lifetime, you cannot comprehend me, you cannot understand me, you cannot know who I am. And he has in no uncertain terms said that he is divinity. He has said so in so many ways and demonstrated it in so many ways. So it's now time for us to graduate. It's like all of us have taken the school graduation exams, our results have come, all of us have passed with flying colors. We need to now go to college. If you don't go to college, you're going to be still in school, waiting for the schoolmaster in the good old days, holding a cane in his hand and trying to tell you, discipline you and everything else. Now that stage is over. You've gone to college now. In college, your professors are not going to have a cane in their hand. They're not going to write anything on the blackboard. They are going to tell you that you are on your own. You need to set a goal. You need to have an agenda. You need to have clear-cut vision about the path you are going to take and where you are going to reach, what is your destination. And once you have that, somebody is going to guide you, hold your hand. It could be somebody physically holding your hand. It could be somebody, Swami will hold your hand. Now I see that every other day in the affairs of the trust. I see that, you know, we have now, just before Swami's Mahasamadhi, he expanded the Central Trust. Swami is looking after the Central Trust single-handedly from the time it was formed in 1973 till 2010. He was a sole trustee. There was nothing that happened in Central Trust in this period which was not done directly by Bhagavan. Nothing. Not even 1 rupee was spent without Bhagavan's signature. Of course, it was very well organized. Bhagavan didn't have to spend too much time. He would spend about 15 to 20 minutes on one day in a month for these affairs. That's all the time that he spent on this, not more than that. 15 to 20 minutes was all the meeting that he had. But we trustees now, we are meeting for 2 full days and we are not able to finish the agenda because there are so many things that we have to do. So many issues that have to be discussed. So many items that we have to look into. So many conflicting claims that are being made. How do we deal with these issues? These are all the things that we are talking about now. So what I am saying is, Swami did all this alone, single-handedly. Till in 2010 he expanded the trust and he inducted few trustees and also appointed the council of management. And after Mahasamadhi, the council of management was expanded and we now have a board of trustees of 9 people. Now all these 9 people, I am sure most of you would have heard their names, who they are, where they are from and how long they have been associated with Swami. It was a difficult task for us, but by Swami's grace and Swami's foresight, I must say, Swami had foresight at a spiritual level, at a divine level, at a human level. Now at a human level, when he sets up 2 super speciality hospitals, 2 general hospitals, 1 mobile hospital, 1 university with 2, 3 campuses and the 4th campus he had announced, all this, it means that a lot of resources have to be given to all these things. How did Swami do all these things? Swami did not create wealth in that form and used it for all these purposes. He enthused people by his message. He said, you have to serve all. You have to help everybody. You should never hurt anybody. How do you serve all? Now, just before, after I came here, I received a clip from Dr. Oleti Chaudhary, who's the director of the Satsai Super Speciality Hospital at Prashanthi. You know, the National Board for Accreditation of Hospitals for Standards, we made a voluntary application to enlist with them and get ourselves certified for NABH. Now that team came to inspect the hospital. They spent about 5 days of inspection. At the end of it, they made a presentation to the institution. I'm told that's the practice. The head of that assessing team and the deputy head, are both expected to speak and explain. Now I saw that clip Dr. Chaudhary had sent to me. You know, it must be seen to be believed. Two doctors who had nothing to do with Bhagwan, they had heard of Bhagwan, but they didn't know his hospitals. They didn't know what work the hospitals are doing. They could not believe. In fact, the deputy had a lady from Delhi, she says, Kamaljeet Kohli or something like that. She says, I never even thought it was true. Now, how can you have super speciality hospitals in so many faculties, which is completely free? I said, I was shocked when I came and they told me there is no billing department here, nobody pays anything. And then I thought, well, it must be some ramshackle small hospital where you do some first aid and things like that. But when I come there and I see the hospital, it's not possible for me to conceive that this magnificent institution has been built by Swami, where there is no cash, there is no bank, there is no money transaction involved. Everything is done in terms of love. And she spoke about it and said, how is it possible that so many people are treated with so much of love and care and concern when they have no connection with that person? You see, most of the patients who come there are poor patients. How are those poor patients treated with such compassion and love? I am not able to comprehend. And he says the only explanation that I can give is that there is a divine hand which is dealing with this. Now the divine hand has done what the divine hand could do at a divine level. See, the divine interaction of Bhagwan is the connection with Sevadal. See, how many Sevadal come from very poor strata of society? See, for those people, if they have to give up a job, lose a 10 days of wage and come to do seva, it is a great sacrifice. If they have to travel, you know, in India they travel from 2,000 miles to 3,000 miles, all the way from Assam, Nagaland, Meghalaya, West Bengal, from everywhere they come to do seva here. Now, how is it that happens? What is it that is drawing them? It is Swami's divine hand that is drawing them. They feel that if I come here and I do my little bit, it's something which uplifts me. This happens at the lowest level. At the highest level, I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman who's a very famous lawyer in Bangalore, family of devotees. His father, Swami, used to know them, go to their house in the early 50s. After that, there's some small disconnect. The children didn't keep that connection. But now this son is a very famous lawyer. And every time, you know, he hears that I'm going to Puttaparthi, he comes and tells me, Naganan, just give me one file which you are carrying of Bhagwan. I want to be your assistant and stand next to you and hold it. It's a great privilege for us to do something for Bhagwan's mission, something for, whether it's small thing, whether it's big thing. I still remember Gopal Rao Garu, at the age of 98 years, he was the chairman of India's biggest bank. He held important positions everywhere. Swami celebrated his 100th birthday in Prashanthi Nilayam. 98 years of age, the man was living alone. His sons were well settled, some in America, some were in India. He lived alone there. And he had a bent back. He used to come to South Indian canteen, take a water can, pour water in the cups of each of them sitting there, collect the lunch coupon from them, and go and give it for cancellation. At 98, I have seen it. He was my great-grandfather's contemporary. We lived in about the same area in Bangalore, Gandhinagar. He knew my great-grandfather well. That was his age. And the man worked like that. So why did he do that? He could have lived a very comfortable life. He had children everywhere. But no, he said no. I have come here, Swami has brought me here because I have to do some seva. Let us all ask ourselves, we are getting so much from Bhagwan. What an amount of peace. What an amount of contentment, what an amount of, what shall I say, satisfaction we get in our own family lives when we come close to Bhagavan. What is it that we are doing in return to give back to Swami? See, Swami doesn't want anything from us. He doesn't expect anything from us. He has repeatedly said, I don't want anything from you. I only want your devotion. Now, how will you show your devotion? I was just reading the 9 points that are there. If we just follow that 9-point path, we are going to be going somewhere. It says help. What kind of help will you give? If you are a rich man, you can give money. If you are not so rich, you can give your time. If you are intelligent, you can give your intelligence. If you are an educator, you can give your skills of education. If you are in research, you can come, for your information. We are about to set up a very important research center in Prasanthi Nilayam. The Satyasai Archives is nearly ready. All the material that Swami has generated, his speeches, his talks, his writings, and every single interaction of Bhagavan, all the videos, the photographs, all of them have now slowly been collected from all over the world. Some of them were in America, they were in the early 70s. Very few people shot films, and some of those films which were in America have all been brought now. They're all archived. So in the archive, we are about to build a scholars group to do research into what Swami has given the world. I don't know how many of you know, all the Vahinis which have been published, they are all written by Swami in his own handwriting in Telugu. It is not somebody writing it. He actually took paper and pen and wrote it down, and we have those manuscripts with us. Those Vahinis were translated by Kasturi. If you read them, they're such tiny, it's like capsule form. It's like a power-packed vitamin tablet that we now take, plus 50, plus 60, minus 50, all those tablets you get now. It's something like that. You have one tablet for every category of patients, every category of person wants vitamins. If you want to learn about love, you can read Prema Vahini. If you are interested in philosophy, you can read Sukta Vahini. Like this, for everything there is a different capsule. So my suggestion is, the spiritual being, please start by taking the Vahinis. And you must study them carefully. You must analyze them. And from it you will profit greatly, because I find in my day-to-day life, sometimes you might be surprised. In the course of arguments in a case, if I am reading some Vahini and I find something useful there, I actually quote from it. And I tell the court that, look here, this seems to be the concept of a right and a wrong. And this is what I found, and if you permit me, I'll cite it. And I have actually read many of them in court. So what I'm trying to say is, these are absolute gems, and we need to pay attention to that. The research center that I was telling you about, see, what has happened is, Swami's messages are so diverse and dispersed that we need to bring everything together into a coherent form for modern usage. And that's exactly the idea of this research. It's going to be a very deep research into what Swami has left, so that we're going to come together and make modern presentations of it, and both at a scholastic level and also at a very mundane and usual day-to-day usefulness level. So that's another important project that we have been looking at. Post the Mahasamadhi, there have been boat rocking on many counts, and all of you are aware that whatever the negative publicity that happened after that is all sort of died down. The government of Andhra Pradesh asked for some information about the trust. We gave them a truckload of information. They asked for more, we gave them more. Finally they said, you guys are dumping all your papers into our office, you are not giving us what we want. We said, whatever you want is given, everything is here. Please see, if you want us to help you with it, we are there to help you. Not a single question came back from them to say why this was not done properly, why that was not done properly, this is wrong, this is correct, this is not correct. Not even one. Right? We are now 4 years down the line. The Andhra government is completely satisfied. They have nothing. They can find nothing, because in Swami's organization and trust, there was really nothing that was out of the ordinary. Everything was blessed by Bhagavan himself. Now the post-Mahasamadhi, the trustees have done their best endeavors. We have not sold even one pin after Swami's Mahasamadhi. No property of the trust has been sold till now, not even one. There are so many properties that Swami had, so many donors had given different parts of the world. Not even one the Central Trust has sold. So the question of somebody selling something just doesn't arise. Finances have been consolidated. We have started the system of transparency. Every year on Swami's birthday, we are releasing the balance sheet, an annual report which contains all the information of all the Sai organizations, national, international, the brother and sister trusts that we have. There are many other institutions like the Satya Sai Ishwarama Trust, which Bhagwan set up. My wife is a trustee of it. We have 2 other trustees on that. What activity they do, the Media Foundation, number of other institutions which are there. Their complete report is being put out on the internet. It is there on Central Trust website. Hard copies are given to everybody who wants to see it. So what I am saying is, there cannot be an institution which has more transparency than this. So the trustees are fully conscious of their obligations and responsibilities. We are trying to discharge them to the best of our ability. I'll conclude with referring to one last aberration that seems to be sweeping different parts of the world, the phenomenon that they're talking about from Muddenheli. Now I think we need to understand. The reason why I started my talk with 2 types of communication is that one direct communication Bhagwan gave to me and to other people. Another communication without words is what happened when I went to Russia. Swami never ever used some media person or an intermediary to convey. If I could pick up a phone call and talk to Swami, that facility should be available to every devotee. Actually it is. All that you need to do is sit down, close your eyes, dial the number, connect up with him. It may ring for some time, he may be busy, he may not be picking up your call, but you need to hold the call. You will get that message, please wait, you are in the queue. So you may be in the queue. So long as you have patience, so long as you have perseverance, so long as you have devotion, so long as you have your confidence that Swami is going to listen to you. I can assure you, I can go on talking for another 2 hours about my personal experiences. In times of need, Swami is always there to answer you. I felt very orphaned at the time that Swami left us, because there were so many things that we were talking to him about, and the minute you place something before him, in a minute, he would say, all right, Bangaru, you do this, don't do this, we consult with this, let us do this, let us... Straight instructions were given. Sometimes he would say, wait, which means it's not the right time, let's defer it. None of these things we could get instructions now. How do we manage? Was the feeling that we had. But 4 years down the line, I can assure you, we have never had a problem. We have never in doubt. Whenever we needed Swami's guidance, he was always available. Same way he is available. The last thing that I'd like to say, if somebody is not being truthful, would you say that he is following Swami's path? If somebody claims to be Swami's intermediary, and that person is not stating the truth, he is backed by people whose foundation is falsehood. They illegally amended a trust deed. Swami had retained the power to appoint trustees on the Lok Seva Trust in the Central Trust. Without my consent, I am a trustee there. They deleted that clause and got a document done saying the power is no longer with Central Trust. Why would they do that? How many of you know that the Satya Sai Anandam building, which was built as they now called it, we never christened it like that. Do you know who paid for that building? Did anybody from Muddenheli pay for it? Who designed it? Who laid the foundation stone for it? Yes? Baba. How bright you are. Excellent. Fantastic answer. I think he is reading my mind. Actually, that's what happened. Baba selected the spot. Baba went there and laid the foundation. Very few buildings Baba laid a foundation stone for. This is one of those few buildings. Baba laid the foundation stone. Baba planned the whole building. I was involved in it. Every single detail of it. He talked to Ramakrishna Garu of L&T. The building was built in a magnificent manner. but Swami was not there to grace the inauguration. Then it is located in the precincts of the Mudenhedi, very close. The reason why that building was built was, as you all know, Swami announced that a new campus of the Satsai University will be set up in Mudenhedi. And that campus, there's a building that was built there for students. This is exactly next to that. So Swami wanted a residence for himself to spend time with the students in Mudenhedi. And now they say that building doesn't belong to you. It belongs to us. Who's us? That us, that trust. Swami set up that trust in 1978. And my father was the person who drafted the trust deed in 1978 for the trust. In 2008, 30 years later, Swami amended the trust deed and gave me the task of power of attorney to go and register the document after signing it. I went and registered the document. The document said, after Bhagwan, the trustees of the trust will be appointed by Satya Sai Central Trust. Now, who changed it? How did they change it? Why did they change it? And now they're talking about great good things they're doing, about building schools here and collecting money for it. Have you ever, in my 40 years or 50 years of experience with Swami, not even once I've even heard anybody saying, Swami asked me for money. I know of people who waited in the queue for years to give money to Bhagwan. Bhagwan said, no, you keep it. He never received it. He never went to anybody for money. If somebody comes and says, Swami, I telephoned to me yesterday, I come to your house, and he said, go to his house, he's going to give his house to you, please take it, and ask him to go and live somewhere else. This is a message Swami has sent through him to somebody. And that person comes to your house and says, sir, Swami has sent this message, so kindly obey Swami's message. What will you do? It's a question which we need to ask ourselves. It has happened in this country. They have come to people and told them, Swami has sent a message that you need to give so much money from such and such a trust to so and so person. They have given it. Millions of rupees. Equivalent in pounds, of course. Swami never asked anybody for money. The answer is, oh, there's some good work that's going on. They're building free schools and things and like that. Why should Satya Sai Central Trust not build free schools? If you want to give money to start a free school, Satya Sai Central Trust has already got so many free schools that are running. Why should Satya Sai Central Trust not do it? And more than anything else, this other trust which they have set up has nothing to do with any one of us. None of the Central Trust people are there in it. We don't know what's happening. The proposal to start schools was never placed before the Satya Sai Lok Seva Trust, of which I was a trustee. Never placed before us. So somebody individually wants to do all sorts of things. Swami is in subtle body. Do you need a subtle body Jaguar? Do you need a brand new Mercedes Benz for a subtle body? You don't need it. But they have it. Why? These are questions which somebody has to answer. And they're not answering. And now finally, the Central Trust has filed a lawsuit against them. It's going to take its own course. So, I just conclude by saying that we should not get distracted by these kind of activities. They are good people, they are bad people. And Swami always said, if you meet a bad person, you tell him Sai Ram and leave his company quickly. This is Swami's advice. If you get a feeling that somebody is not a good person, all that you need to do, Sai Ram brother, Sai Ram sister, turn away, go. And where should we go? We should go to that place where you have good people. You should go to that place where your mind is at peace. You should come to Swami. Swami is our ultimate master for everything. He is the one who guides us everywhere. So I think let's confine it that way. And let's pray to Bhagwan to help us, to guide us, to overcome all these trials and tribulations. Swami always used to say, passing clouds, vastundi, potundi. That means these difficulties, these problems, they keep coming and they keep going. Just like how clouds pass or going. So I think let's leave it as it is and let's bask in the glory of our Lord and in the beautiful message that He has given us. please come to Prashanti Nilayam. That is his place, that is your place. I still remember once when, I'll conclude with this, I think I'm running out of time. We were in Prashanti Nilayam, and suddenly at about 11 o'clock, I got a message. Actually I was with Swami at that time. And he was about to sit down for lunch. He looked at me and said, "Where is your wife?" So I sort of looked perplexed, and I didn't answer. She said, "Oh, she didn't know. Okay, go get her." And he said, "Satyajit, take my car, go and bring her." She was in Shanti Bhavan. And the minute he went there, Swami was already seated at the table with the food on his table, on his chair, on his plate. He went there and told her, "Ma'am, Swami is waiting for you for lunch." So she was not, she was wearing a salwar kameez and sitting in the room. So the minute, he said that, she said, "What? He's already at the table. I have to change." No, I can't make Swami wait. She didn't change and she came. The minute she entered, Swami looked at her, gave her a broad smile and said, "This is your house, so you've come in the right dress." So you see, he knew that she was embarrassed, that she was not wearing a proper sari and properly dressed and attired, everything. But then the minute he saw her, he said, "This is your house. How you are in your house, you can be in that way in my house." So what I'm trying to say is, this is Swami's house. So let's all feel that this is Swami's house. We're going to be with Swami. We're going to go and stay with our parents, with people who love us, and there's nobody else who can love you more than God. Thank you very much.